how is the process of getting to that destination maybe evolved over time?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, I think it's just that, you know, like every year is an opportunity to refine it a little bit further, look at what's worked in the past, where we can improve, you know, are there gaps? And I have really high confidence in the group that we have to do that. They've been hard at work now for quite a while, and for the most part in Pittsburgh at this point, most of the amateur baseball is done, so pretty much hunkered down upstairs, and we'll get started formally in terms of like the draft room that first week in July. But it's an exciting time, as you said. It's a huge opportunity for us, and really believe that we're continuing to improve our process, and that'll lead to good things next month.
The consensus with this draft class seems to be that there's a lot of really good college arms, considering, you know, your organization's success and development and flipping these guys for major league talent. Do you think that puts you guys in an advantageous spot?
You know, I think I really just want to look for the best player, and we're confident in our ability to draft and develop pitching, certainly. And so if that's the way it falls and it's a pitcher, we'll be excited about that. But we've got to create more offense too. We know that as an organization. So it's going to come down to the best player, and it'll be up to us. And I'm very confident that we're going to be able to create a really good onboarding and development plan for whoever it is, and get them off to a good track in their pro career. So it's exciting. We need to get better. So best talent available. Yeah.
But last year you kind of bucked the trend where a lot of people projected college bats. You went with a prep player, and Connor's looking pretty good. It's looking like a smart move. But how much, given where you are right now and how much you need offense, do you feel pressure to, not necessarily that you're not drafting the best player, but that you're drafting for positional need as opposed to pitching, and going with, you know, the best positional player? Like how much of that becomes, there's pressure on that because you need to add that to the organization?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question, Kevin. We do feel pressure to create more offense, for sure. We have to do that to deliver what we need to deliver to our fans, to deliver more to our fans, which is our focus. Part of that's going to be creating more offense, so no question about that. I don't believe that doing that, especially in a place like Pittsburgh, is ever going to be about one thing. You know, one decision, one free agent, one trade, one draft pick. It's never going to be about that. It's going to be about 100 things, and we need to create more offense. So what I'd want to avoid in the draft is, you know, making our decision any harder because of that. Let's just find the best player, and with that, we know we need to create more offense over time.
Wanting to create more offense, how much would you weigh, you know, a guy who could be seen as somebody who could be quick to the big leagues and make an impact here sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm really excited about in how our draft process has evolved, and I really feel that keeps getting better over time, is that question is sort of baked into the process. So, you know, I don't feel like now we're really having to think about the decision between, you know, maybe upside and risk of being further away versus closer and safer. I think it's all part of the process, and the process itself is, I believe, doing a good job of capturing all of that, capturing both the upside and the risk of every player, and it's getting them in an order, and we're gonna be disciplined and honor that order when we're done with it on July 6th, and just take the best player available.
If it's not through the draft, do you think you could address that offensive need in other means, like the trade deadline coming up and everything?
Yeah, I mean, we have to keep addressing it in every way possible. It is the draft. It's just not a single decision in the draft. But it's certainly the draft. It's international. It's trades. It's hitting development. It's the environment we have in the major leagues. It's roster construction. It's how do we build a roster that fits PNC. It's all of those things, and inside each of those categories, there's 100 things. So we just have to do that. I think, you know, I know how much awareness we have to solving that problem, and really have had. You know, this is something that organizationally for, at least 2 years now, it's been very clear that, okay, to win, to deliver more to our fans, we've got to create offense, and really high level of awareness on that to solve that problem, and an incredible amount of work and focus going into solving that. And all that hasn't bubbled up at the major league level, obviously. So we have to, first of all, be accountable for that, and just stay at it. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's going to be hundreds of things that ultimately lead to more runs on the field and more wins.
And you mentioned it, that's all baked into the process. But how much has, especially the past two drafts, 23 and 24, with how quickly these guys have accelerated from being drafted to getting to the majors? I mean, 23, I think there's probably close to a dozen players were in the majors a year after the draft. How much has that changed maybe the pre-draft process, where you're thinking about, hey, we have to draft guys and we can't wait 4 and 5 years for them to develop. We need them to make a more immediate impact. Like, how much has that impacted the way you go about everything now?
Yeah, I certainly don't want to, and I don't think any team would assume that just because a single player came into an organization, moved quick, that those rules are going to apply perfectly to the next one. So we want to be careful just to keep it about the player, what's best for the player, and what's the path that's going to make sense for this player. Not everyone's going to move fast, and there's lots of good players in the major leagues who didn't move fast. I do think that, particularly at the top of the draft, even for high school players, that the access that players have to really good development resources, even before they get into pro ball, continues to be better than ever. And certainly that's the case for the high-level college programs, but even for high school players, the resources are out there. You don't have to wait to get into pro ball to take advantage of those resources. So I do think certainly at the top of the draft, we're seeing players come into pro ball better equipped than ever, really. Doesn't mean it's easy. There's still failure involved with the pro game, but yeah, players are pretty much ready to go.
Ben, as you evaluate your pitching and the organizational depth, are you confident that if the offense were able to catch up, that your organization would be in position to take the next step, either as a winning organization or a playoff caliber organization? Is the pitching depth in a spot now where that would be the case?
I believe so, but I think only in assuming that we do our jobs to keep optimizing that pitching depth. So I don't think we just sit passively and assume that the talent itself is going to be enough. Like, we need to keep the pedal down to challenge guys to keep getting better and find the next step with guys. And we should be an organization that where that can be a real strength. I think we have the talent. I think it is a relative strength, and it's we're doing pretty well, but not satisfied either. I think the answer to your question is yes, assuming we continue to challenge it and find ways to push guys to the next level.
Relatively speaking, would you consider that you have a surplus, relative to the league?
I actually hadn't thought about it relative to the league. I think, relative to position players, still probably, yeah, internally. Maybe that's starting to even out a little bit, but so I think, but I don't feel like, I don't think we're going to be jammed up or anything. Like we've got room for all the pitching we have, and pitching has a way of, kind of sorting itself out as it relates to who's on the roster at any given time. There's injury, there's attrition, etc. So I think we're at a solid foundation there. We got to keep challenging it, and I really believe there are pitchers in the organization, both the major league level and minor league level, who are capable of more, and it's our job to help them find that.
Is anything going on with Bubba Chandler? He's a bit of a bump in the road, I guess, relative to his success.
I mean, personally, I think it's just that. I think it's a bump in the road, and he had such a dominant 2 months, and it's hard to sustain that every single outing. He's also in AAA, and like everyone else in AAA, they want to be in the big leagues, and we're helping him manage that. As I've said before, we believe it would be a good outcome for Bubba and for the Pirates if he is pitching games in PNC this year, and still want that to be the outcome. And believe that he'll put himself in a position to make that happen.
What's going on? Because we're not watching it.
It's just not, like, the execution in command hasn't been quite what it was. The quality of the pitches is still there, the velo's still there, he's healthy. He's just not dominating the strike zone as much as he was early, and, you know, kind of not dominating counts quite as much to put himself in the best position, and just led to some, you know, some messier outings. And he's learning from that. He's very focused on it. He's super accountable, so he knows what he has to do to put himself back in a good spot.
On the note of bumps in the road, like O'Neill's really struggling right now. What do you think is behind that, and do you think it's anything mental related, or is it just kind of just him figuring this out with mechanic stuff?
Yeah, you know, without being inside him, I don't think I'd want to speculate on the sort of the psychological part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard game, so that can always be a possibility for any player who's going through something. Yeah, I mean, we're not seeing any differences in the underlying skills. Obviously, the bat speed, and how hard he hits the ball, and all that stuff's still there. He's healthy. He's been going through a rut, and this has happened before, and he's come out of it, and I expect he will, and he's doing the work. And, you know, we know he's capable of more. He knows he's capable of more. There was a stretch there during the season where, you know, he was clearly the best player on the field a lot of nights for a stretch. And now he's going through it a little bit. We just got to get him back to it.
When you say, you know he's capable of more, why do you feel like he hasn't been that more frequently?
Yeah, I think just, you know, every player is a human being first, and they're all coming into it in their own way. And he's got these incredible gifts, and he's still developing and learning that consistency skill, and that, you know, how do I be the best version of myself every night? This is not, when I say that, I want to be clear, I really feel strongly about this. When I say that, it's not about work ethic or, you know, whether he wants to be good or care level or anything like that. These are, you know, it's just a skill that players have to develop like any other skill, and to be great at the major league level, to be an everyday player, be great, that's a skill. He's still developing it. I think we're seeing progress if we think about sort of year over year progress, we're seeing that. We're still seeing times inside a season where it can ebb and flow a little bit, and that's where he is. But I'm confident. We're confident he's going to come out of it. He wants to be good.
And you had mentioned earlier about taking advantage of PNC Park and the dimensions, and last week I heard you speak about that and you thought about the fence line. But is it a pull side power that you're thinking about, draft wise, even accumulating more hitting talent as we go on here next year or two?
Yeah, I don't have a particular example or idea. I just think like there was certainly a point in the process we were in that where we're trying to accumulate as much talent as we can and develop that talent. And obviously those things by themselves are hard things to do. We got to keep getting better at that. But at some period of time we weren't thinking as much, or maybe just not prioritizing as much. What is the specific combination of players that fits this ballpark the best? And I think, we're obviously now in a period where we want to be delivering more wins, and it's not the only thing that's going to do that. I think it's just one thing that we need to really think clearly about. So the obvious part of that is, like left-hand hitters are going to generally benefit from playing here more than right-hand hitters, and we're a little bit more right-handed than we are left-handed, so that's a simple part of it. But even you're always going to have some right-hand hitters, and so I think we need to think about who are the right-hand hitter, what style of right-hand hitter is going to thrive here, what style of left-hand hitter is going to thrive here. But certainly the simplest part is probably just to try to get a little bit more balanced, a little bit more left-handed over time.
Is that like with Spencer coming here? He's kind of more of a gap hitter, power from the alleys. Is that something you start to talk to players about taking advantage, either with him pulling it or even with Brian? I know he's adjusting, but
yeah.
Off the field, that anything even with the current players?
I think certainly it was part of the idea on Horwitz is that we felt like he was the type of left-hand hitter that could thrive here because it's not elite power, it's not a 40 home run guy, but he's got enough to get out here at PNC. but he also uses the whole, track record is he uses the whole field, so he gets hits kind of everywhere. And that kind of, we feel like that kind of hitter can thrive here. Generally speaking, you know, right-hand hitters, unless you're Andrew McCutcheon in your prime or something, like right-hand hitters who thrive here tend to be able to find their hits everywhere. You know, if you're hitting 380-foot fly balls to left field, this is not a park that's gonna forgive you. Like, you know, it's not as forgiving a place to do that. So, yeah, you have to find your hits in different ways. And at the same, there's a fine line though. Like, you know, hitters at the same time, there are certain things about hitters' identity you don't want to mess with it too much either. So, again, case by case. It's not, by no means am I suggesting this is the only part of solving for our offensive issues. There's a lot more to it than that. I just think it's one aspect of it.
What has Connor Griffin done to be this successful so early in his pro career?
Yeah, just his approach to his day, really from the first day as a Pirate, seemed to be, you know, advanced for what you'd expect for someone his age. Obviously, there's physical ability there. To some degree, there's some part of his physical ability that I think maybe even was underappreciated as an amateur, because in some ways you don't really have a chance to fully test it as an amateur. For example, you know, there was some, you know, if you read like industry stuff, there's some question about the bat as an amateur. Well, the way I interpreted that mostly is that, well, he's from a small town in Mississippi, so of course there's going to be questions. Like nobody really knows when you're facing that competition. That's the question. Once he's in pro ball, now we can start measuring things more accurately, and we now know, like, no, this swing's pretty good, and he's got bat speed, and he's making contact, and you know, it quickly starts to answer that question. And then the shortstop plays the other one. You know, like, admittedly, there's, you know, uncertainty even for the Pirates on, you know, when we drafted him. Where is he going to play down the road? Is it going to be short? Is it going to be center? Somewhere else? I think a lot of that, again, is just because there's not enough sample to really know the answer to the question until he gets into pro ball. And now he's been able to play short quite a bit his first, and he's passed those tests pretty well. And so we now have a lot more conviction that he can do it. So I think it's a combination of those things. His approach to the day, pretty advanced from the get-go, and then some of the skills probably just being there, but needing the program to test it out, and he's been passing those tests.
Ideally, would you like him to remain at shortstop?
Yeah, I think that's clearly our focus right now. He's, you know, continued to dabble in center just to sort of, it's partly to keep it in his back pocket, and honestly partly because it's sort of fun for him to do it, and it creates a challenge inside his game, but the priority is shortstop at this point.
So shortstop in the short term, and I'm talking 2026, you've got a guy there right now on an expiring contract. What is the short and maybe long-term plan there?
Well, we believe he can play shortstop, you know, short and long term. We have not put any timeline on, you know, like when it could happen here. Well, you know, he'll tell us that answer over time, but we see him as shortstop.
I'm just talking about the position at large, you know?
Yeah, oh yeah, like
2025.
solving that. Yeah, right. So he's a free agent, and so that question is going to come back. We haven't gotten far enough to really think about 2026 quite yet.
With the questions that were surrounding his bat Connor's bat when he was in high school, was there something that you guys saw that made you feel comfortable in drafting him and not having to question that tool for him? Yeah,
a combination of things. Like, one is that certainly our scouts had a lot of conviction. So you start there, and that for a high school player, that input's really important. We did see he had some of the highest contact rate on the amateur summer circuit the summer before. You know, so his summer after his junior year, they play in all those showcases and face good competition, and his contact rate relative to his peers was towards the top. So he's showing he's at least making contact against the best high school pitching, you know, that he's going to face. So that's an input. We can measure bat speed, and we saw good bat speed. And then we also now have ways to measure bat path using the stuff we would use to assess a professional player. We can apply that to an amateur player using high-speed video. And we had some good insight from that the bat path itself had a chance to be productive in pro ball relative to a different kind of bat path. So mostly those things: scout input, contact in the summer, bat speed, and bat path. Like good signal on bat path, not like proof on the bat path, but good signal. You know, made us feel good about taking a bet on it. You still don't know for sure. For the high school player, I don't care who it is. Like, you just don't know for sure until they're in pro ball.
And the trade deadline's still 4.5 weeks away, but there's a lot of rumors out there about the Pirates and who would be available. One is, I'm curious how much you stay in touch with some of the players and kind of keep them abreast of what's going on. And two, if there's anybody you deem untouchables, whether it's at the major league level or just within the organization.
Yeah. I do the best I can to stay in touch with the players on our team who might be in that speculation. I've started a little bit of that, and we'll do more of it here in the coming weeks. I certainly want the door to be open to, you know, if guys want to talk more or less. Sometimes they just don't want to. So I've had players tell me like, yeah, I get it. Don't worry about it. You know, if there's a trade, come and find me, basically. And there's other players who want as much as you can give them, and so you try to do that. Yeah, to the broader question, look, like I've said before that, and I still believe that the group of players we have here in this clubhouse and in this organization, that we're capable of playing better baseball. We're capable of winning more games with this group. We're also not delivering at the level we need to our fans, clearly. And you know, you can go back to the beginning of last August. We have not won enough games. Clearly, not nearly enough games. We're not delivering at the level we need to, and so we got to be honest about that. And we have to find solutions to that, and we want to deliver more to our fans as fast as we possibly can. The next 5 weeks will bring opportunities to that we can either use to our advantage, and that's our job, use them to our advantage. We have to be ready for that. And I think what that means more than anything is just we got to go into this open-minded. We're not delivering enough, we need to deliver more. That means we need to be open-minded about what comes to us in the next 5 weeks.
Does that change the approach at all in terms of what you're expecting in a return for a trade, that they have to be closer to the major league level, like you need help?
I think you can think about it, like that, but you know, you can also acquire an A-ball prospect and then trade that A-ball prospect, or trade a different, you know, you can use your players, the talent you have in the organization at different times in different ways. So I don't think, like, you know, if we happen to make a trade where the return was a younger player, I wouldn't read anything into that in terms of how motivated we are to win games faster. This is not, you know, the focus will be we need to win more games as fast as we can. Whatever the returns are, our focus will be is win more games as fast as we can.
Just given the amount of pitching depth you guys have both here and in the minors, and the need for offense, does that kind of give you a little bit of wiggle room in terms of what you can look for in trades, just because you have so much pitching depth to kind of exchange for offense?
I expect we'll keep getting asked about it. I think we want to be careful that, you know, you have pitching in depth until you don't, and when you don't, man, it's really hard to build it back. You know, you're then in a really tough spot because everybody needs it, and it's harder to get it coming in the other direction. So I think we want to be opportunistic. We need to get better. We need to win more games, and there's more than one way to do that. But certainly, scoring more runs is a simple part. Is going to be a simple part of that, and so we need to be opportunistic, be open-minded. But you know, we're not anxious to trade pitching to do it. We just need to be open-minded about how we do it.
You talked about, you know, needing to generate more offense. You've got a couple key hitters here: Reynolds, Henry, Tree. Basically, the team as a whole. That maybe the expected stats that the public data paints a bigger picture than the actual stats. How much does that factor into whenever you're roster building or just assessing what you have here moving forward?
Yeah. Nobody wants me to talk about bad luck or lack of luck, and people are tired of that. I get it. We do believe we have some hitters in that category. So yeah, absolutely. it's an input, you know, because you're thinking about those players and what we believe we can expect from guys going forward and how we build a better offense. It's an important input, you know, we believe in those, what that data is telling us, and it's part of making the bet over time that, okay, this should be different over time if that data is telling us that.
And you're able to, I feel like this is maybe awkward spot, you know, whenever it comes to sample size, where you obviously have a lot to glean something from it, where it might be like, okay, your X slug is whatever it is, but there's also what's on the back of the baseball card. There, like, how much does that, do you put stock in the quality of the bat over the stat, or which, I guess, do you leave more on?
I think it's a little bit of both, really. I mean, you know, I think we can learn pretty quickly about players who don't have a lot on the back of their baseball card, you know, nowadays, because, you know, there's just so much information, and you know, within 100 plate appearances, you can learn a lot at the major league level. Not perfectly, but you can learn a lot. But yeah, of course, if someone has the track record on the back of their baseball card, and they're still showing the skills, the underlying skills, and they're still at an age where they should continue to be good for a while, then obviously that's the type of player that we'd make a bet on.
Ben, when you're talking with other teams and starting to assess offers, is there any sort of aversion to trading your players within division, or are you strictly just looking at the best offer for the Pittsburgh Pirates?
Generally speaking, no. There may be specific cases where that, you know, in a tiebreaker situation, you might prefer not to do that. But
Right.
I think generally we try to avoid that because we just need to get better. We want to limit. We don't want to add too many things to the plate that are going to make it harder to find the best opportunity. And so generally my feeling about that is that it shouldn't matter. Every team's taking some risk in a trade both ways. So if it happens to be in division, well, then the other team's taking that risk too, and you're doing it together. There may be some specific cases over time where there'd be some preference not to do it, but as a general rule, I would not want to worry about that too much.
At this time last year, I remember you talking about how the market was kind of hard to get a read on, just because where you guys were positioned and so many other teams, you didn't know who was buying, who was selling for the most part. Do you feel like this year you're able to get a better read on what the market might look like come July?
Yeah, I mean, I think the math is against us right now, and so when we get calls from teams, it seems like there's more of an assumption on their part on why they're calling. So maybe that's the answer. You know, we don't have. We've certainly started all those calls. Teams are talking to each other by now, but there are definitely a lot of teams that are still in that feeling out process, and so we don't have a perfect picture across the league of exactly where everyone is. But we started the phone calls.
That's good.
Thank